Good morning, happy Tuesday, PASW staff, clients and our friends joining us weekly. Hope you enjoyed Lady and the Tramp. That's a pretty romantic, lovely scene. So get something into me today. That would be great. Doesn't have to have lyrics, doesn't have to be Italian, but it should be, romantic dinner music in that realm of something like that. Not the Beach Boys or something. So you guys know the drill, and if you're new, please just text me and send me stuff and some ideas. I'm here to work with you guys, and as we know, very generously, there's a monthly prize. So each week, almost not a class goes by without me mentioning Scott Joplin. And I didn't know how, I always liked his music. Not until we did our class together did I think about his importance. Not just like I like the music, but how important he was in the evolution of all the music that we talk about. Last week was Miles Davis with jazz. Then we did classical music, and so some of these advanced classes, which we're going to talk about tomorrow, have helped a lot. And Joplin is a name and a person that comes up all the time. So we're going to review Scott Joplin's life today and music today with a class. Previously recorded class that we've seen, because we need review. We want to show you guys where he came from and how he started. Then tomorrow we're going to take a step back and think about how did Joplin get there, because it's driving me crazy. I have to see the trajectory. We have to together. So tomorrow we're going to back up and dive into how he got to that ragtime feel. So lest anyone think we're going to be at Disneyland today, we won't. We will be hearing ragtime music it's just so fun. It puts you in such a great mood. Hopefully you'll be put in a good mood too. Today we'll be talking about the American composer and pianist Scott Joplin. Scott Joplin was dubbed the King of Ragtime. So we'll look at what ragtime is. When you hear it, you'll know what it is. But ragtime is really a precursor to jazz, and it's a hybrid of classical music and African American folk music, which one could say that is what jazz came to be. So we're going to look at Scott Joplin's life and music, and this is the late 19th century. So this is before jazz and Dixieland is sort of invented. This is like 10, 20 years prior to that, prior to Louis Armstrong and all the people that we know. So we're going to look at the transition. 20th century was so interesting in so many ways, that turn of the century of so many inventions being made, but in particular music. It became so much freer, and one of those freedoms is jazz, and before that is ragtime. So we're going to look at ragtime. So we'll definitely have too much fun today. So we'll just try to contain ourselves. We're going to learn about Scott Joplin, learn about ragtime, learn about So let's dive into a little bit about. First, we'll talk about ragtime, and then we'll look at his life. So the term is kind of originally was like ragged plain. So ragged means not, this is not ragged. This is kind of ragged, right? And you'll hear that even though it can sound smooth, the left hand of the piano is playing the chords and the bass line, while the right hand is playing the melody. So he comes up with this kind of, along with a few other composers, but he's the most famous, just mostly because of the songs he's written, and you'll recognize some of the songs. So ragtime has this rhythmic drive and this syncopation with it, and you can hear that in these pieces. So let's talk about his early life, because he had an interesting life. Most people think he was born around 1868, right around that part. It's not really well known because there weren't any documents back then, especially for blacks, unfortunately. And his dad was an ex-slave. So this is, if we think about, this is sort of right around when slavery ended, quote unquote ended. But so his dad was an ex-slave, but he was a musician. He played violin and would play for plantation parties in North Carolina. And his mother was a singer and played banjo. So he was given musical lessons by his family at the age of 7, and his mom would clean houses while he would play the piano in exchange for they would let him use their piano and she would clean their house. So, and this is all in Texas or Arkansas. Scholars are not really sure about where, but definitely in the South. Definitely someplace we don't ever want to go to, right? I'm just kidding. And so he finds this teacher, this Jewish, German American-born teacher that moves to the South and to Texas in the late 1860s. And at the age of 11, he starts taking lessons with this guy, Julius Weiss. Julius Weiss had a huge influence on him, and he taught him free of charge because he saw so much potential and talent in Scott Joplin, and he knew he didn't have any money, but he introduced him to a whole wide range of music and taught him harmony and theory and music like Chopin, and taught him about classical music. And that's where he got his training at a young age in classical music. He also introduced him to polka music. And if we think of polka music, polka has a real rhythmic sensibility to it. And so we're kind of wondering that, or not wondering, we are kind of thinking about early jazz, right? Early 20th century music. Because not only jazz, but if we think of European classical music, right? You have the 19th century, we have Chopin, we have Tchaikovsky. We haven't looked at Chopin, but I mean, we've looked at Tchaikovsky and other romantic composers. So we have this European romantic music going on in the late 19th century. Then we have Scott Joplin, and we have, with the end of slavery, we have this really great African-American folk music going on. And he's blending this. He's hearing music in Europe, and he's also hearing his music that his parents are playing and people are playing around him, and he's blending this into, and we'll never understand, but we're just trying to figure out what, and then his piano teacher also introduces polka to him. So he's taking in all these things of music, all these different styles, and he's creating his own style. I mean, Joplin was a genius. I mean, this guy was so ahead of his time and set the foundation for American music. I mean, when you think of, jazz and ragtime, they're truly an American art form, which is really cool to say that, for us to say that our country, not invented it, but we can go with that. I mean, I kind of think so. So the teacher is really, and he's faithful and loyal to this guy the rest of his life, and would give him money and would take care of him. He would just Scott Joplin with Julius Weiss later. So that's kind of cool. So the Chicago World Fair happens in 1893, and this is a huge world fair celebrating, the beginning of Columbus's voyage to America 400 years later. And he gets a band together, and he's playing cornet at this time. So he's playing trumpet, which a cornet's a smaller trumpet. So he's playing these piano and cornet, not at the same time, but and he gets a little group together. They play at the World Fair, and people start taking notice of this kind of new music, this up-tempo classical music, if you will. That's, if we just put it in simple terms, he's taking European harmonies and waltzes or whatever, and then just simply putting kind of a beat to it, a rhythm, a pulse or something. And he gets some attention there. And there's this little prank that these train conductors pull somewhere in the South. And so he writes this march based on what happened. It's like they made these two trains collide as, I don't know, entertainment. I mean, people had nothing to do back then, but it wasn't like an accident, but it was a planned accident. But when he witnessed this, and when he saw these trains going by, he got inspired by, and he wrote one of his first ragtime Great Crush Collision March. And that's what we're hearing right now. This is one of his early pieces. You can see that. And like Meredith Willson, who we talked about in The Music Man, that opening scene of the train, chicka, chicka, chicka. Scott Joplin's seeing the train as a rhythmic device in music. So we could make that kind of connection, perhaps. And so with this first train march that he writes, he's starting to find this new way of writing music, which is really cool. So after that, Joplin moves to Missouri, and he begins publishing his own music, and begins and composes the most famous song, probably, Maple Leaf Rag, in 1899. This brought him tremendous fame and wealth too, and for a black band at that time, to get recognition, fame, and wealth was so truly amazing. And so, as you can hear, there's kind of stride piano, left-hand piano. It's so hard to play. It's so fun, and it sounds so easy. And really, he was more of a composer than a pianist. They said that he was kind of a mediocre pianist, actually. So. Doesn't matter. He wrote, it's really about the writing, but I didn't kind of know that. So Maple Leaf Rag in 1899, and then a few years later, in 1902, he writes The Entertainer, which is almost just as famous. This was back when they kind of had the player pianos. And player piano, you've probably seen that at Western, Knott's Berry Farm or something like that, where it's like a self-playing piano, and you can program little notes on a piece of paper, and you put it in the piano, and it has that kind of like cowboy saloonish sound. It's kind of like early MIDI recording, if we think of it now, but that's kind of the ragtime feel. And it was probably very hard to play, so if they made a player piano do it, they could speed it up and, I don't know, make it faster. So Joplin considered his rags not really jazz-like, in the sense that they were supposed to be played exactly how it was written, just like a classical piece. And he elevated this kind of saloon playing music to a real art form. And his teacher said, Julius Weiss said that, the music should be entertaining, but it should also be artistic as well. If you can have art and entertainment together, then that's and we've talked about that. It's good to appeal to as many people as you can, but also to maintain that artistic integrity too. We think of the Beatles, and they were so entertaining to listen to, but then there was something, another level that was going on that was very brilliant and artistic too. And if you can get both of those together, then you have the formula. So that was good advice. But he elevates this kind of jazz saloon, early jazz saloon ragtime, that you would play in like bordellos or something like that, or cat houses. And he wanted it to be more in the mainstream and not considered a low art form or something like that, which is ridiculous, because it's a very brilliant art form, and very sophisticated in a fun way. So, yeah. And then not only he writes these beautiful, soft, sensitive songs as well. I mean, we hear the kind of, not mechanical, but a little mechanical, left-hand stride chords with Maple Leaf and Entertainer. But then he'll go on to write something like Bethina, which he just wrote for his wife after his wife's death. His wife's name was Freddie. Not sure what that is, but regardless, he writes these gorgeous. This is a gorgeous waltz, so melancholy. He has such a heart in a lot of his music. So it's not just play this as fast as you can. He has such. And then when he comes out a few years later with Solace, which is this Mexican serenade. It's so. This is 1909, so this is really early. I mean, in terms of, this 1909. People, it was like the Wild West here in L.A. But I don't know why I said L.A. because this has nothing to do with L.A. But just the country. Yeah. So this piece is one of my favorite pieces, and we're listening to a recording that maybe is the most famous recording of Isaac Perlman on violin and Andre Previn on piano, and they did this wonderful album of all of Joplin's work. And even though Joplin didn't score it for violin and piano, I think that what they created on this album together in the 80s or so is the best album for Joplin's music. And so after he moves to New York, after Missouri, he moves to New York and tries to get his operas produced because he wants to keep going in this grand way. But he spends a lot of his own money, and he ends up broke, and nobody wants to put on the opera, and it's another kind of sad story, and he gets very depressed, and he's suffering from syphilis at this time, and he ends up in a mental institution in New York, and dies at age 48, and of syphilis and dementia, and so much great music in his heart. And he influenced a lot of people while he was alive, including Claude Debussy. Debussy loved his music and was influenced by this ragtime going on. So European composers were taking notice of, this black guy playing this great music in the South. Not only Debussy, Eric Satie from Paris was taking notice, and Igor Stravinsky in Russia, and he was in France. So these European composers are taking notice of this guy playing while he's still alive. And he was really famous and very wealthy during that time. So he was just a tremendous talent. And Scott Joplin, love his music. It just always puts me in a good mood. My aunt is a great piano player, and she'd always play his ragtime music when I'd go over the house. And I was just like, this is fun, this is just so... I remember her playing Pineapple Rag, and she might be watching this, so Auntie, thank you very much for playing this wonderful music. When I listened to it as a kid, I just thought it was so fun. And then as an adult, you just realize, oh my gosh, that was fun, and it still holds up as great music. So, but in the 70s, George Roy Hill, the director, comes out with The Sting in 1973, and The Sting is a great movie. It's so great, but he uses all Scott Joplin music, and that's with Paul Newman and Robert Redford. So you should check out that movie. So in the 70s, he kind of gets a revival of his music going. But yeah, what a wonderful composer, pianist, and everything. So okay, hope you enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun telling you guys about this. So I hope you enjoyed that earlier Scott Joplin lecture or class. It's such fun music, right? I mean, it puts a smile on your face. It does seem like Disneyland music. It's just happy. It's vibrant. It's the rhythm is great, and the melodies live on. The sensitive, solace piece. So he wasn't just a fast playing piano man. He was, a very serious composer. I mean, thank God for that teacher, Julius Weiss. I've been thinking about that guy. I mean, he just found the right teacher, and he taught him for free, which is really cool. And he took care of him later in life, so sometimes it just takes one person. You don't need the whole world to love you. Just maybe one person to notice, hey, you got a big talent, and then let me expose you to this. And when you're exposed to something, you end up changing the world possibly. So I thought that was really, really great. So think about Scott Joplin, think about ragtime, and we're going to go in tomorrow and look at how that style came to be with Scott Joplin. So lots to think about, but still make sure you enjoy your day too. Okay, see you tomorrow. Bye.